In this µCast, I'm going to show you how to replace the default Yocto Linux image on your Intel Edison with Ubilinux from µTech's labs. The Yocto Linux distro that comes pre-installed on the Edison is a great option for embedded applications because you can customize the distro to fit your end product and off you go. It's not great, however, for playing around with different things and exploring what your Edison is capable of, and can seem a little unfamiliar if you're used to all the amenities of other embedded Linux distributions like Raspbian. Building packages from source and installing them is a pain, especially if you're used to having a package manager. That's where Ubilinux comes in. It's based on Debian-based, which for any Raspberry Pi fans out there is the same thing that Raspbian is based on. It comes with C and C++ dev tools, Perl, Python, Node.js, and most importantly, a package manager. So trying new things on the Edison is as easy as apt-get install. Before we begin, it's important to note that this will wipe everything that is currently on your Edison. We're doing a full image replacement here, so if there's anything saved to your Edison that you want to keep, make sure you save it off somewhere. We're going to use the mini breakout board for this walkthrough, but my understanding is that it's very similar on the Arduino breakout. The walkthrough does assume that you have already installed the Intel Edison drivers for Windows, so if you haven't, go ahead and pause the video and take care of that before continuing. I'll put a link below to get you to the right page if you need to install that. The first thing that we need to do is download the Ubilinux image, and we get that from the µTech's Labs website. If we come to the main Ubilinux page here, all we have to do is click on this Ubilinux for Intel Edison, and the download will start. Now I already have it downloaded, so I won't click that. It's about 200 megs, and so while that's downloading, you'll also want to download the DFU utilities, which are necessary on Windows. Now I'm just going to include this link below so that you can get it. But it's thanks to the Spark.io community for building these and making them available so that we can use them in our project. Now, I have them both downloaded and ready to go here. So what we want to do with both of these on Windows is come into Properties and select Unblock. And we'll do that for the image as well. Move it up so you can see it here. Do Unblock. Okay, and then you'll need something like 7-zip to unzip these. And so you just right click, do 7-zip, extract here. And once that's finished, we'll have the tar. So we'll right click on that, 7-zip, and extract here. And that's going to give us a folder that's called to_flash, and it's going to contain all of the files that we need to flash our Edison. Once that's done, we'll do the same thing with the DFU utils. And for the flash process to detect our Edison on Windows, we need this DFU util. So we'll come into this folder, we'll come into the Win32, and we'll grab DFU util.exe and the libusb DLL that goes with it. We'll copy those, and we'll paste them into this to_flash folder. And now we are ready to flash our Edison with Ubilinux. Having spent a lot of time on the Edison forums, probably the biggest problem that people run into is getting their Edison into DFU mode. Now DFU stands for Device Firmware Upgrade and is a special mode that Edison goes into right when it boots up. Kind of to say, hey, if you have any new firmware, now's the time to flash me. Otherwise, it just continues with its normal boot sequence. I had quite a bit of trouble getting it into that mode on mine. Turns out it was a cheap USB cable, and if you look around the forums, it's riddled with examples of this same thing. Make sure you use a good USB cable. I'm just using a Kindle transfer cable, and it works just fine. Now you can use two USB cables during the flash process, but only one of them is required, and that's the one that plugs into the USB port labeled J16. If you're looking at your mini breakout board, it's this bottom one. The top one is used for terminal emulator output to show you what's going on the Edison, but you'll get feedback from the batch script, so to keep it simple, I just recommend using the one USB cable. If you need to debug, you can always plug that other one in later and connect to it through an emulator and see what the Edison's doing. So at this point, what we'll do is open up a command window and browse out to where we downloaded our image. We want to browse out to the to_flash folder. Now, your Edison shouldn't be plugged in at this point, and all we're going to do is come into our command prompt and run flashall.bat. And you'll see that it's going to say, now waiting for DFU device 8087. That's the vid and pid of it. And it says, please plug and reboot the board. So you'll go ahead and plug it in. And once it goes into that special DFU mode, you'll see it'll say flashing IFWI, and it'll start going through the flash process. This is pretty much it. If you've made it this far, you are practically home free. This does require a little bit of patience. It takes normally around 5 to 10 minutes to flash. What you do not want to do at this point is unplug your Edison. Just leave it plugged in and let this process finish. You can see here it says flashing rootfs. It can take up to 5 minutes. It seems like for me it's taking closer to 10. I'm going to go ahead and fast forward this, but it will show you a progress. Now once your download finishes, you'll get this message that says your board needs to reboot twice to complete the flashing procedure. Please do not unplug it for 2 minutes. Now 2 minutes is just a guess. Your Edison needs to reboot twice. Now, if you want, you can sit there and watch it and watch the power light go off and on twice, or you can get up and walk away. Some people have gotten really nasty in the forums about getting up and walking away because when they come back, they have no idea if it's rebooted twice. Use some common sense here. If you've been away for 5 minutes, your Edison has rebooted twice, and if it hasn't, you're screwed anyway. So leave it for 2 minutes. If you really are not sure, you always can plug in the extra USB cable at this point to see what you get in the terminal emulator. If you plug it in after 4 or 5 minutes and you hit enter twice, you should be at the Ubilinux login prompt. So anyway, don't unplug it until it has rebooted twice. Okay, so now that your Edison has rebooted twice, it's time to start poking around. And to do that, we're going to go ahead and plug in that second USB cable if you haven't already. And once the driver for that has loaded, what you can do is come into Device Manager and scroll down here to Ports. And we see this USB serial port COM4. So on my machine, it might be different on yours. The Edison serial output is on COM4. So we'll go ahead and get that out of the way. And you can use any terminal emulator you like. I use PuTTY. It's easy. It's a single download. All right, so in PuTTY, we're going to change the connection type to serial, change it to COM4, and then the speed is 115,200. And we'll go ahead and click open. And when you first open it, it'll just be a black screen here. If you come in and hit enter twice, you'll see we get the Ubilinux login and we're ready to go. The default username, there's actually a couple. There's the root account and then there's an Edison account. I recommend just logging in as root. So we'll do root and the password is Edison. Whether you log in as root or Edison, the password's Edison. Go ahead and clear the screen here. The first thing I like to do after I log into Ubilinux for the first time is to set up the Wi-Fi so that we can get onto the internet. Now to do that, we're just going to do nano/etc network interfaces, and we're just going to edit this file. And what we're going to do is we're going to comment out this auto USB 0 line, and we're going to uncomment the WLAN 0 line, just like that. And what we'll do down here is we need to give it the SSID of our wireless network. So I'll enter that here. And we also need to do the passphrase. We'll hit Control X to exit and Y to save. It'll ask us to confirm the file name, just hit enter. And at that point, we can just do IF up WLAN 0, and it will try to connect to your Wi-Fi. You can see there I got an IP address of 10.0.0.15. To test this, just do a simple ping google.com. And there you go, we're getting responses. Great. Now that we have internet, let's go ahead and update Ubilinux. To do that, we'll just do an apt-get update. All right, once that finishes, you have a brand new Ubilinux distribution. It's up to date and ready to play with. Now, one thing that I think is missing from this distribution that you might be used to is the sudo command. That package is not installed by default. It is easy enough to get. All you have to do is an apt-get sudo or apt-get install sudo. And that does it. At this point, your Edison should be running Ubilinux and connected to the internet and ready to play with. You can use apt-get to install all different kinds of packages to see what kind of things your Edison can do and play around. Stay tuned for future episodes. I'll be covering some different things that we can install and play around with in this distribution. And as always, if you have any questions, please reach out to me. You can find me on Twitter at Kevin Sidwar, or feel free to send me an email, sidwarkd@hardlysoftware.com. Hope this has been helpful for you, and as always, happy hacking.